You've been praying for 7 years for prosperity. You've fasted. You've given your tithe with tears in your eyes. You've put your hand over your wallet during service asking God to fill it up. And you're still broke. And the worst part is, you think the problem is a lack of faith. It's not. I'm going to tell you something that maybe nobody in your religious circle has the courage to tell you. You're using the Bible wrong. You've turned a technical manual into a book of magical promises. You've memorized the verses about blessing and completely ignored the verses about instruction. You want to harvest where God told you to first plant, water, and tend. God doesn't hide money under your pillow while you sleep. God doesn't pour wealth over someone who's sitting around waiting. The Bible is direct about this, and if you've never seen it, it's because nobody ever taught you to read the book the way it was actually written. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you a secret. A secret that is literally in your hands. You touch it every day and you treat it like it's nothing. And until you wake up to this, you're going to keep praying for a miracle that God already gave you, but that you refuse to open. Stay until the end, because what I have to tell you changes the game. Look around, stop, breathe, and really look. That co-worker of yours, the one who doesn't even go to church, just bought a new car. Your neighbor, the one who's always posting parties, just moved into a new house. That cousin you always thought was kind of a mess just opened his second business. And you're still there. Same job, same account in the red, same prayer for 5, 10, 15 years. And a voice starts whispering in your head. God forgot about me. You don't say it out loud. You don't have the courage. But you feel it. You feel it when you see other people's testimonies in the church group chat. You feel it when the pastor talks about prosperity and you think, does that apply to me? You feel it when you do the math at the end of the month and realize that even doing your best, the money doesn't stretch. You ask yourself what you're doing wrong. You've fasted for 3 days. You've done prayer chains. You've sown financial seeds. You've anointed your wallet with oil, and nothing changes. And then comes the spiritual exhaustion. That exhaustion nobody sees. The exhaustion of someone who's doing everything right from a religious standpoint and still getting passed over. I need you to understand something before we go any further. You're not being passed over. You're standing still, and those are two completely different things. The blessing didn't pass over you. It passed right beside you, waiting for you to stand up, and you stayed on your knees, asking it to come to where you are. The question that's going to bother you over the next few minutes is this. What if God already answered your prayer a long time ago, and you just didn't notice, because the answer didn't come in the form of money falling from the sky, but in the form of something you needed to do? There's a pattern in the Bible that 90% of Christians have never noticed, and the pattern is this. God almost never gives money. God gives capacity, and from that capacity, wealth appears. Look at Bezalel in the book of Exodus. When God needed someone to build the tabernacle, he didn't appear to Bezalel and say, "Here, take this finished gold." No. The biblical text says that God filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, in knowledge, and in all kinds of craftsmanship. In other words, God placed in Bezalel's hands the technical skill, the knowledge, the practical intelligence. The raw material came later. The capacity came first. Look at Joseph in Egypt. He wasn't placed in charge of the country because he prayed beautifully. He was placed there because he interpreted a dream with intelligence, and then he presented an administrative plan, a management plan, a 22-year inventory plan. Pharaoh didn't promote a spiritual man. Pharaoh promoted a competent administrator who happened to be spiritual. The distinction changes everything. Look at David. Before he became king, he tended sheep. And tending sheep, he learned to use a sling. He learned to observe. He learned to protect the flock from lions and bears. When Goliath showed up, David didn't win with a miracle. He won with a technique that had been refined through years of solitary practice in the field. Solomon asked for wisdom. He didn't ask for gold. And because he asked for wisdom, the gold came after. Wealth was the consequence of capacity, never the starting point. There's a constant throughout Scripture. God first deposits the talent, the skill, the intelligence, the discipline, the capacity to produce. The financial blessing is the natural result of all that being well managed. When someone in the Bible receives wealth without having first developed capacity, that wealth disappears. The sons of rich fathers who had no character lost everything. The servant who received 1 talent and buried it lost even what he had. The pattern is as clear as the noonday sun: capacity before wealth, always, no exceptions. Let me confess something to you. For many years, I read the Bible wrong. I read it looking for promises. I opened the book of Proverbs hunting for verses about prosperity. I ignored Ecclesiastes because I thought it was heavy. I skipped the laws of the Old Testament because I thought they didn't apply to me. And one day I realized something that completely changed my perspective. The Bible is not a book of promises. The Bible is a technical manual, and inside that manual there are promises. But the promises are tied to conditions, to principles, to disciplines, to practical laws. Every "I will bless you" in Scripture is preceded or followed by an "if you do." The blessing isn't free in the sense of being effortless. The blessing is free in the sense of being undeserved, but it requires movement. I started reading Proverbs as a management manual, and I discovered that in there you have instruction about planning, about saving, about the danger of co-signing debts, about the importance of observing the ants that store food in summer so they have it in winter, about the work that produces abundance and the laziness that produces poverty. I discovered that half of what's taught in personal finance courses today has been in Proverbs for 3,000 years. I started reading the parables of Jesus as lessons in administration. The parable of the talents is not a cute metaphor about spiritual gifts. It's a literal instruction about what God expects from those who receive resources. Multiplication, calculated risk, return on investment. The servant who buried the talent was called wicked and lazy. He wasn't called shy and reserved. The language is harsh because the subject is serious. I started reading the law as an entire economic system. The prohibition of predatory lending. The year of Jubilee as a financial reset. The harvest leaving the edges of the field for the poor as a social safety net. All of that is societal management technique. The Bible taught me financial discipline. It didn't teach me to wait for money to fall from the sky. It taught me to work, to plan, to save, to invest, to be honest, to pay debt, to avoid co-signing, to not despise small beginnings. And when I started applying this, my financial life began to change. Not because of a miracle, but because of obedience to technical principles that had always been there, open, available, ignored. Stop asking for what you don't have the capacity to manage. I need this to land deep. If God gave you $100,000 today, would you know what to do with it? Do you know how to invest? Do you know the difference between fixed income and equity? Do you know how to calculate compound interest? Do you know how to build an emergency fund? Do you know how to structure a business? Do you know how to read a balance sheet? Do you know how to negotiate a major purchase without getting taken advantage of? If the answer to most of those questions is no, then asking God for $100,000 is like a 5-year-old asking for a high-cylinder motorcycle. It's not cruelty for the father to refuse. It's love, because giving that to the child would sentence them to death. That man who actually prospered, the one you admire from a distance, he didn't wake up rich. He woke up studying. He woke up working while others were sleeping. He woke up reading technical books, taking courses, refining his skills, making mistakes, losing money, getting back up, trying again. His capacity was forged before the money showed up. The money only confirmed a competence that already existed. You need to do the same. And you need to start today from the position you're in with the resources you have. It doesn't matter if you make very little. What matters is what you're doing with the hours between work and sleep. What matters is whether you're reading, studying, learning a trade, refining a skill the market pays for. Bezalel wasn't born knowing how to work with gold. At some point in his life, he practiced. He ruined pieces. He wasted material. He learned through error and repetition. When the calling came, the skill was already in his hands. God filled with his spirit a capacity that had been built over years. The question you need to ask yourself today, out loud, is this: what skill am I developing right now that will make me useful enough to be well paid 5 years from now? If you don't have an answer to that, you don't have a financial problem. You have a direction problem. And no prayer solves a direction problem without corresponding action. There's a biblical principle that Jesus states in an almost brutal way. He who is faithful in little is faithful in much. He who is unfaithful in little is unfaithful in much. Stop. Read it again. He who is unfaithful in little is unfaithful in much. This means that the way you manage the $1,500 from your paycheck today is exactly the way you'll manage the $15,000 a few years from now, if it ever comes. Whoever blows their entire year-end bonus on something frivolous today will blow the manager-level bonus the same way. Whoever can't set aside 10% to save right now won't set aside 10% of an income 10 times bigger. The scale changes. The behavioral pattern doesn't. That entrepreneur you admire, he spent years cutting out coffee, cutting out new cars, cutting out dinners out, cutting out travel, to reinvest everything into the business. His discipline with small amounts was what created the foundation for the large amounts to come. He didn't win because he hit some kind of spiritual lottery. He won because he was more disciplined than average for longer than the average person could endure. You need to get into this game now, today, with the salary you have. Build a budget. Write down every cent that comes in and every cent that goes out. Identify the leaks. That subscription app you don't even use anymore. That daily snack that eats up $300 a month. That installment plan you don't even remember signing up for. Cut it. Cut it without mercy. Every dollar you save today is raw material for your financial freedom tomorrow. And then you start building a reserve, even if it's $20 a month at first. $20 that becomes $50, that becomes $100, that becomes $500. That becomes your emergency fund. And the emergency fund changes your entire psychology. You stop accepting bad jobs out of fear of not paying the bills. You start making decisions from a position of strength, not a position of desperation. Discipline in the small things is the test. It's the test God applies before entrusting much to anyone. Joseph was disciplined in Potiphar's house, then he was disciplined in prison, and only then was he placed in command of Egypt. David took good care of his father's sheep before he took care of the flock of Israel. Nobody in the Bible receives much without first proving faithfulness in little. Nobody. And you're not going to be the exception. Now you know. You're not going to be able to walk away from this video and go back to passive prayer as if nothing happened. You're not going to be able to pretend you're waiting on a blessing when, in reality, you're running from the responsibility of preparing yourself. It's written in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18, "And I need you to engrave this in the deepest part of your soul. Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth." Pay attention to the word, power. He doesn't give wealth. He gives the power to acquire wealth. Wealth is acquired by you. The power is given by Him. They are two distinct things, and the entire Bible revolves around that distinction. God deposited a capacity in your hands. You have 2 arms that work. You have a brain that learns. You have 24 hours in a day, the same as everyone else. You have access to a volume of knowledge that kings and prophets of antiquity never had. All of that is divine raw material deposited in you, and you're treating it like it's common, like it's nothing, like it's a small thing. It's not small, it's the secret. The secret has been in your hands since the day you were born, and it's only going to turn into wealth on the day you decide to stop waiting and start moving. Get up from the chair, open a notebook, list the skills you need to develop, list the financial leaks you need to close this week. Define the first concrete step you're going to take in the next 7 days. And start today, not tomorrow. Keep praying, keep fasting, keep depending on God, but add action to your faith. Because faith without works is dead, and that wasn't me who said that. That was James, and he was talking about something serious. The blessing is in your hand. The movement is yours. Do your part, because God has already done his. If this video confronted you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with that person who needs to hear this today. And tell me in the comments, what is the first practical step you're going to take this week? I'll read them one by one. See you in the next one.